In this video, we're going to be talking about why it might be a huge mistake to connect your email address to something like Claude or any other LLM or AI product at the point of making this video. We're actually going to look at a blog article that I found really interesting and covered many of the risks I thought about, and actually thought about some new ones I'd never even heard about. By the end of this video, you will have information to consider on if you want to connect your primary email account to any of these LLMs, and also come up with an answer for what the solution might be, and the one I'm going to use if you need some sort of email connectivity to an LLM to run a project or an AI agent that you want to. Just a quick intro to me, guys. I am Roshan. I am creating videos and taking you along the journey with educating myself on AI as I look to see how AI is going to affect me and my career in the future. I'm doing future videos on developing my knowledge of AI. I'm going to do one shortly on building my first AI agent. And eventually my aim is to bridge my knowledge of AI with the context of accounting and finance and what that looks like for me in the future. I'd be interested to know what the context of AI is for you and what you're going to be using it for yourself. I think it's really important to identify it so you don't go down this rabbit hole of just learning everything, but learn with a little bit more focus. If that sounds interesting, please subscribe. And if you want to, also go chuck your email address in on my website and you'll be the first to know as soon as I start to write something of value for you. So just before we get into this article and discussing the risks around connecting your email account, the way I became more aware of the risk was I was actually reading a Reddit article where someone was talking about OpenClaw and the fact that they connected an AI agent to it and many other different things, including email and other stuff. And he gave that task to the AI agent to go and do some research. And that AI agent eventually went as part of his research and bought lots of packages online using his credit card details for information he just wanted to learn and know about and thought would be useful to his task. And this is the thing that alerted me to the risks around AI. There's one, that you're giving access to this incredibly intelligent, powerful thing that can do volumes of work that are enormous compared to the average human in very little time. And number two, it's really hard to think about the constraints you're going to have to tell AI to stop it and limit it from doing something really damaging, like perhaps going and using your credit cards to buy something online. We're going to cover in more detail what the things there are to think about when it comes to connecting your Gmail account. I just want to give credit to Wayne Rodriguez because I found this article really useful and I learned a couple of new things from it. As we get into this, the first part of this journey, which I think is quite an obvious one, which talks about here in a nicely structured way that if you have a primary email account like I do, it's probably your recovery account for so many things. And there's two things here. One, giving access to your email account. You've probably never given access to anyone to your primary email account, especially if it's a personal one. And just doing that with something online, such as an AI agent, is effectively more smart than any person you're going to give it to. And it can read a lot quicker than any person out there as well. So you just want to think about the amount of information you're giving one of these LLMs or AI agents. And also, at the same time, where is this information being stored? Yes, it's being stored on encrypted channels between where it's being sent and where it's being received. But this could be used on a server somewhere in America or in Asia or anywhere else in the world. And if those are compromised, maybe your emails will be too. The other thing to think about, and we'll use Claude as an example because that's the one I've looked at and that's the one this article talks about. Claude talks about it not learning or basing any of its learning on your actual emails. But there is a risk potentially in parts of Claude where it actually writes summaries of your emails and you discuss your emails perhaps in some sort of chat, that it may use the chat element of the conversation to develop its learning. So it may not directly learn from your emails and sent and received, but it may learn from the conversations you have around it, which might, or the data and summaries it pulls around it, which also feels a little bit more risky, and also the fact that I just don't know what that even really means. This part of the article I found really interesting, and I'm going to link this article just below this video, and please go check it out and read it so our guy gets some volume. But I found this really interesting that when you're actually giving Claude access to Gmail, you may decide that you don't want it to send or reply to emails, so you may just give it read-only access. But the actual level of access that Claude gains from Google is the ability to send emails, read emails, etc. It's actually on the side of Claude software that they switch off, they toggle off the ability to send emails if you decide you don't want to do that or give access to Claude to do that. But that's kind of a limitation if you really think about it. If you don't want Claude to send emails, that should be switched off on Google's end. Because if there was a compromised activity that happened for Claude, someone could simply switch that on and start sending and receiving emails. So that just seems like a little bit of a security risk in itself. This risk is covered a little bit more again when you scroll down. So another quick risk that's highlighted here is that if you give Claude access to your Google Drive and tell it to look at one particular file, even though it may look at that file, it also has the ability to download all the files, which you may not want it to do. And again, it's just out there in the world of not knowing what is going on in the background with all your data, which before we give access, we should really be able to answer. The three connectors with Google Workspace, which I think is another interesting one. So you may decide you want to connect your Gmail, or maybe you actually decide, no, after this video, I'm not connecting my mail and I want to connect just my calendar, which is a lot less risky to something like Claude or an LLM. Well, in this instance, it sounds like the connector or the permissions you grant, similar to above, is actually not that well managed, where you actually give the permission to access all three products, potentially your calendar, your Google Drive, and your emails. But it's on the side of Claude that they actually limit the access, and you toggle off the access perhaps for Gmail and perhaps for your drive space, and only calendar is maintained. But really, again, the privacy and security element should be Google kind of shutting the door on what's allowed, not giving full access to the person who's requesting it, and they then effectively decide whether they want to use it or not. This was perhaps the most valuable thing I learned from this article, and it talks about indirect prompt interjection and the risk that most people aren't thinking about. It's a great article. Thanks for highlighting it. Now, this is effectively saying that there is a lot of cybercrime going on, and as you know, I have experienced it in myself through family and friends, that people committing cybercrime are usually quite far ahead of the curve. And at the moment, people might be coming up with language that, if sent to an email that is being managed by an LLM, might convince the LLM to do something. And it looks like from this article, there's been instances where LLM has effectively gone and sent really confidential information out based on a request coming in. But a lot of these requests are coming in forms that are invisible. So you don't really see the request coming in and you don't really see much of the data going out. So it's almost invisible to the actual user. This is an important one to be careful of. And again, think about, do you want to share lots of personal information in Gmail or accidentally share it and open yourself up to more cybercrime? As we scroll down this article, I think there's lots of useful stuff in here that I don't feel comfortable sharing. So please go and check it out if you want to look at the article. I'm going to blur it out, but these are all really useful things from someone that is an expert in the data field, which is really useful to read about. The last part of this article is talking about just toggling on and off things where Claude is able to train itself on your data. And it sounds like if you're on a personal plan, you just may want to go and read. There's instructions here. Like I said, go read this article. I don't want to show everything on the screen because it's not my content. But effectively, you can go toggle off, or at least check that it's toggled off, that on the free version of this software, that Claude is not learning from certain conversations you're having about your emails potentially. Seems really interesting, and I may go and do that myself. So getting to the bottom of this article, end of this video, guys, if you've enjoyed this and found it valuable, then maybe hit subscribe and you can follow along with more knowledge-based conversations I'm having around growing my own knowledge of AI and taking you on that journey with me. The last thing about this video is just a recommendation. I think the recommendation is kind of an obvious one once you've heard about all these risks, and the one that I was going to do before I'd even saw this article, which was, if you need an email service that's connected to an AI agent, because there's things that you want to do, well, just create a fresh email account and send emails to that account that you're happy and comfortable sharing with Claude or any other LLM. And that's just going to be a way safer place to start. Guys, that's the end of this video. I hope it hasn't scared you off, but just made you more conscious of the things you should be thinking about with data and progressing your journey with AI and building AI agents and just learning more about this whole field. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to catching you in the next video.